Welcome. I'm Lisa Fewens. I'm with Black & Veatch and I lead our environmental and sustainability business within Power. We're here co-presenting today with Pivvot regarding our process for identifying routes and site conditions and supporting our clients in a way that helps to maximize their project return by minimizing their environmental risk. Black & Veatch is a over 100-year-old company, employee-owned, and we are proud in our commitment to safety, accountability, and customer service. Black & Veatch has provided environmental services for over 40 years with over 150 environmental professionals globally. We're excited to be here with Pivvot today to discuss our relationship and how we are supporting our clients in both innovative and dependable manners.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, my name is Rich Henry. I'm the Director of Professional Services here at Pivvot, and I just want to take a minute to kind of introduce you all to Pivvot. Pivvot is a location data and analytics software company. We have curated hundreds of unique data sets for any location in the United States, and we've made that information very easy to access, interpret, as well as share with others. We offer data acquisition and aggregation, as well as geospatial applications to support companies in the energy sectors. Our tools, which you will see here shortly, are used by companies like Black & Veatch to deliver preferred routes, navigate regulatory compliance, avoid environmental issues, and also get an early and complete understanding of the potential risks that may face a project. We're really thrilled to be here today with Black & Veatch to demonstrate how our tools are helping them meet their client needs as well as exceed their expectations. And so with that, we're going to shift back to Lisa, who's going to share what you all will be learning about today.
So our learning objectives today are really threefold. One, which is applicable at all times, is site analytics best practices and common pitfalls that we see clients running into when it comes to selecting routes for linear facilities as well as other project sites. Secondly, it's how do we keep our projects moving forward? How are we working together to identify data and provide that data in a meaningful way to help drive project decision making early so that we can help projects identify potential pitfalls that could result in budget or schedule issues and avoid those. And then lastly, why are we investing in innovation? As I mentioned earlier, with the pressures driven by the environmental arena, both from a regulatory standpoint, from a financial standpoint, and by the expectations of consumers and shareholders, clients are more and more needing both innovative but yet also dependable solutions. And that is driving us to work with friends like Pivvot as well as others to ensure that we're driving and maximizing the value to clients. Now I'm going to hand over the discussion to AJ Orrick. AJ is a senior right-of-way and routing manager within our global transmission business. AJ?
Thank you, Lisa. And before I explore a use case demonstrating the Pivvot routing tool, I wanted to quickly review Black & Veatch's routing process that we utilized before we started using the tool. So the first step, whenever we'd get a project in corridor and they were identified, we need to reach out to various entities to get the relevant GIS data. There would be communication back and forth with agencies to obtain parcel data and other local data, which could take 2 to 4 weeks depending upon the length and complexity of a project. We would then import the GIS data into our system and manually generate routes based upon a desktop review of the opportunities and constraints. And all this work would be performed by a GIS analyst. So, and after the routes were complete, we would then send them to the clients to be reviewed. Site reconnaissance would then be conducted to verify the accuracy of the GIS data. And then ultimately, there would be multiple iterations of the routes, and we would then prepare a routing study at the conclusion, supporting our determination of a preferred route. One of the major pitfalls with this process was that timing was a critical issue. the front end work to be ready to generate and analyze routes took a significant amount of time. And while using Pivvot's tool, we are now able to recover a lot of this time, as we can typically generate routes and provide detailed analysis and reporting within a matter of days. Also, we no longer require a GIS analyst to do this work, as I'm able to do a majority of it myself. So now I want to walk you through a quick demonstration of the routing tools and its capabilities, starting with this scenario. So the example use case I'm presenting for you today is for a client who wants a new transmission line to be routed that avoids national public lands where possible. Some of the key deliverables that I will review are the route comparison report and the detailed crossing reports, which are provided at each stage of the routing process to promote team collaboration at all times. So this first screen here shows the project details. Everything for the entire routing process can be customized to make sure the client's objectives are being accomplished. In the image, you can see the existing route that was provided by the client. That's the area in red, and then the project corridor is the area highlighted in black. On the left side, you can see several sliders. These sliders allow you to modify the width of the project corridor and also the width of any permanent or temporary easements to be acquired for the project. This next screen here is the objective screen. This again shows the route provided by the client in red, and this is the route that needs to be moved because much of it crosses federal lands, which are depicted by the darker yellow polygons on the screen. On the screen, you can also set any additional objectives, such as substation that all routes must go through in the middle, but here we are just showing a starting and ending point for this project. Two other critical things to note here are that our routing analysis can be performed anywhere in the United States, as the data for the Pivvot tool is nationwide, and also this data is continuously updated, which ensures accuracy of the routing. Also, not having to reach out to the county or each city to get data saves us a lot of time, especially as we don't have to rely upon third parties or the agencies that may not be at their desks right now. And this next screen is where all the criteria for the entire project can be modified, which in turn allows for the generation of different routing alternatives. For this project, we are looking to generate a new route that minimizes the impact of the national public lands. So to focus on this objective, we have the land ownership potential conflicts on the screen here. So we'll scroll down, and that will modify the play to have it be as nearly excludes. What this does is it tells the routing tool to make every attempt to try to avoid this criteria when generating a new route. The route screen that's now shown allows us to view the routes along with GIS data to get a complete understanding of what is dictating the location of newly generated routes. You can also toggle through GIS data and show individual layers as needed. Here the client route is provided in red, with the route generated by the tool is shown in green. You can show that the route shown in green almost entirely avoids the darker yellow polygons, which is due to the modification of the criteria for land ownership conflicts to be nearly excluded for federal land. While only one new route is shown, countless other routes can also be generated by modifying other criteria, setting new objectives, and also adding exclusion areas. One thing to note here for this entire process is that while the tool generates routing alternatives, we do not rely solely upon its output. We still rely upon our expertise to ensure the routes provided are constructible while meeting the client's goals. And overall, the core data sets are generally the same that we would have used in our previous approach, but we now do have some additional data, and it's beneficial to know as much as possible, especially during times like these when we're able unable to actually get out in the field and conduct site reconnaissance. This screen here shows the route comparison report, which is generated instantly along with the routes. The report allows for a side-by-side comparison of the key attributes for the selected routes. Again, as timing is critical for a majority of the projects, it's important that this reporting and other project deliverables are now able to be provided in a matter of days instead of weeks. Specifically for this project, land ownership was critical, so we'll now scroll down to land ownership potential conflicts to see the information for the two routes. Here you can see the client route had 2.81 miles located on national public lands. And then the route generated by the tool has 0.48 miles located on national public lands. So this is a significant improvement, largely to accomplish the client's objectives of relocating the project off of federal lands. One other data set I'll often find particularly helpful is the parcel data. So at the top here, you can see the number of parcels impacted by each route. The client route had 31 parcels, and the route generated by the tool has approximately 40 parcels. You can also review the data in detail, and if you are aware of a potentially problematic landowner, such as for here, a Bureau of Land Management, then you can see the potential impact on a per route basis and determine if alternative routes are preferred that have less of an impact to the Bureau of Land Management. You can also easily export all of this data to create a line list for the project, which is particularly beneficial if right-of-way acquisition is going to be a next step. And that's the end of the quick demonstration for Pivvot's routing tool. As I've previously discussed, the main benefits I've seen from using the tool over the past 2 years is that Black & Veatch is able to quickly and efficiently perform routing work throughout the United States, that we're able to continue routing without contacting third parties who may not be working right now. And we've also been able to have up to 50% savings in schedule for projects. And at this point, I will turn over the presentation to Corinne to review her scenario.
All right. Well, hello. Thank you, AJ. Following from AJ, my name is Corinne Rosania. I'm with Black & Veatch, and I'm a lead environmental scientist in our Environmental and Sustainability Services group. Specifically, I help coordinate environmental permits for projects, power projects specifically. So I'm going to walk you through a different scenario. In this instance, AJ described doing a routing study where you're deciding based on the attributes of getting from point A to point B, what's the best path or route to go. In this scenario, this would be where a project has already been selected. And in this instance, I'm going to discuss that the client is looking to propose a substation engineering and construction project. So a lot of times we get that project and we're already given a site. That location has been selected, and so part of our task is to decide, let's look at this area and put together a permit list. What sort of environmental permits will be required to execute this project successfully and in a compliant manner? And one of the other big things too, whenever you first look at a site, is to see if there's any red flags or, maybe some high-level risks or permits or circumstances that might have a long lead time. And so Pivvot is a really important tool to help give us a quick snapshot of that and to help us kind of put that permit list together. I am going to go ahead and take control here and show you an example in Pivvot. As I was describing, we're going to look at a substation site. Normally, whenever the Environmental Services Group gets a project, it involves a KMZ that is a map of the location site. If we're not given a KMZ, I can also manually draw a project in Pivot Aware. But in this case, what I did is I took a KMZ and I imported it prior to this conversation. That way it would be here and accessible quickly. Here I zoomed us into our project. This is our example substation site, this large polygon here. And whenever I'm given this project, they're suggesting or recommending construction of the substation down in this lower right quadrant. So I'm going to zoom us in to that lower right quadrant. And whenever I first look at this map, just like any Google map, I can visualize, okay, it's, not smack dab in the middle of the city. It's more of a rural setting, but there's not much else I can tell right now. So what I'm going to do is turn on some of these environmental layers, and we can start to quickly visualize what sort of environmental features might be at the site. That way I can start to evaluate what federal, state, local permits might be required. So I'll turn on commercially navigable waterways, floodplain, infrastructure and structures. Those can be things like underground storage tanks, land ownership potential concerns. That could be interesting if there's city-owned property, cemetery, cultural resources, things that might require permitting, agency consultation, or even on-site studies. Also, we'll look at some of the waterway and wetland features and see we've got some stuff populating there on the left. All right, so what I could see real quickly by just accessing some of those quick layers, these features here are wetlands. I'll come back over here on the right so that you can see the legend. So those right there, you can see there's a little tip here and then an entire wetland, freshwater emergent wetland shown up in this quadrant. I'm also going to come over here and turn off our satellite view so that you can notice this other pattern that's popping up. If you recall, I turned on our floodplain to see if we had a floodplain in this area. I'll zoom out so that you can see we do have a floodplain in this lower part of the polygon or the parcel for this proposed substation site. And the reason I point this out, working in a floodplain often comes with, you can come with state or local permit. Sometimes you've got multiple permits. You may need to go to the state, you may need to go to the city or the county. This example that I pulled up to talk to you all about today is actually in the state of Kansas. And the reason I selected that is from past experience working in Kansas. If you're going to do any kind of work in a floodplain, you are probably going to have to work with the Kansas Department of Agriculture on getting a floodplain fill permit. And part of doing that, and in order to get that permit, you need to actually do what's called a hydraulic analysis, which can take a couple weeks. It could cost a little extra money. And you have to coordinate with the Department of Agriculture. And right now, since we're all working from home, including state workers for Kansas, it's actually difficult and could be delayed in getting that permit because Department of Agriculture is working really hard to, serve all the community's needs from home, but doing the actual hydraulic analysis and having those specialists is limited right now. So it could actually add a couple months to the timetable if we need to do work in a floodplain. So there's some features there. So in looking at this, just real quickly, I could visualize that this preferred parcel down here for the substation is going to have a couple extra permits, and the schedule would be a little bit longer than if it were possible to suggest placement of the substation perhaps in this upper left quadrant. So it's completely up to the client and whatever the schedule is and what they prefer. But what we could do is we can put together a permit list which would have a couple extra permits for down here. Probably working with the Army Corps of Engineers if we're going to have permanent impact to the wetlands here. Working with Department of Agriculture in Kansas for the floodplain fill here, where looking quickly at this visual, I can say that those permits would not likely be required here. All right, so there's a quick visual. I'll turn the aerial back on so that you can see that. One of the other neat things that I can do in Aware, a couple different ways to get there, but I'm going to pull you over to the reports page. And we just saw the visual on the aerial map there, but we can also look at the reports for the two parcels there. So what I'm going to do is we can do a side-by-side comparison similar to what AJ showed you in his route tool. I can turn on the option 1, which is that lower right, and option 2, which is that upper left, and we can do a side-by-side comparison. You can see here some simple locational information about the county it's located in, depth to bedrock, which could be useful information, say, for civil engineers. There's no 303D, those are impaired waters. I'll scroll down here a couple. So we talked about floodplains. You can see that site 1, where my mouse is here, is showing there that it is in a floodplain, whereas that option 2 is not. And recall that that influences permitting. You can scroll down a little more here. You can see the land cover for each of those spots. The freshwater emergent wetland that I pointed out on the previous screen, you can see that there are 2 of those shown up in that site 1, and it actually shows the acreage versus none for option 2. And what's neat about this is Army Corps permitting is influenced by the amount of area, and what permit you can apply for. So this information, having this right at our fingertips, is really useful without even having to go out to the field and see that. So there's some other information here. I'll just scroll through quickly. You can see here percent slope. Having the slope of the site is useful when you're looking at what sort of best management practices you might need for stormwater and erosion control. It also can be useful for our engineers who would be actually doing the designing portion of this. All right, so there's a bunch of other neat information in here, and we can look at this and we can play with this online, but I can also run these reports if I wanted to, like I mentioned, run this into an Excel format and share it with our engineers or some other environmental teammates of mine. It also could be useful if we need to send someone into the field. A lot of times we could go into the field to do a wetland delineation or a protected species or cultural resources review. What's neat about Aware is we can actually look at this and see, what can we gain just from doing a desktop study, and is that sufficient? Sometimes it may be sufficient, and that's wonderful. If it's not sufficient, what this information can do is help me narrow down, if we need to send someone out to the site, where specifically they should start or where they should look when they're in the field. This is important for us right now, and we're all trying to work from home or trying to limit our interaction with people. We're restricted on travel. We don't want to have overnight stays if we can help it and avoid that kind of interaction. So if we can minimize our windshield time and minimize our time out in the field, all the better. All right, so I think I've showed you a lot of the features here. There's quite a bit you can gain from this, but ideally what it does for our group in the environmental and sustainability services group, it can help us evaluate what sort of permits are required. It can help us perhaps reduce permitting needs, reduce agency contact or coordination requirements. We can reduce or mitigate project risk, which equates into reducing costs and sometimes reducing schedule, which is always a win-win. And similar to what AJ described in the past, we could get this information, but it would take a much longer process, sometimes having to actually, visit 20 different websites, sometimes having to actually contact a state agency or a local, say, county assessor's office, having to get information from them, which not everyone has access to quick, easy GIS data to share with us. So something that could have taken days or weeks, now I just showed you in a very short time frame. So the benefits of that is that we can tell that it has improved our consistency. We feel confident that it improves our accuracy, and most importantly, it improves our efficiency so that we can get this information in a timely manner. All right, well, I think that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Corinne, for your insights and expertise in routing and site analysis. And so just to retouch on the takeaways, as AJ and Corinne were illustrating, it's so important that we do that upfront and early in the project life cycle so that we help clients minimize the project schedule and budget risk associated with sensitive environmental features or permitting requirements, as well as, one of the neat features that AJ showed is not only can the routing analysis really help us identify the optimal route, but also be used in alternative site studies to really demonstrate that you've, as clients, done your homework and are choosing the site and route that best meets the needs. How are we keeping our projects moving forward? I found it so interesting that some of our local government offices that typically house this GIS data may not be reachable right now. So we're really appreciative of the availability of that data through Pivvot so that we can help projects continue to move forward. And as Corinne mentioned, we have a global workforce. We have professionals all over the United States who may be able to make short day trips to sites depending upon the safety of the situation. But by using Pivvot and by using our subject matter expertise to analyze the data, we can just minimize the amount of time we might spend at site and really determine whether or not a site visit is necessary. And why are we investing in innovation? The key is really driving value to our clients and ensuring that we're providing innovative yet dependable solutions. Thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate your interest in Black & Veatch and Pivvot, and we look forward to future opportunities to support you and your projects. Please feel free to contact Black & Veatch or Pivvot through the email addresses located in the lower right-hand corner.